Voices of the Future, where young minds with big achievements share their stories, dreams, and passions. Hi, I'm Ruslana, and welcome to my podcast, where every episode I will sit with an inspiring young individual who has already started making a mark in this world. Get ready to be challenged, inspired, and uplifted by the voices shaping tomorrow today. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce Ghaya, who's leading the Green Buds UAE initiative. She was named as the UNICEF Youth Advocate for COP28 and is the youngest Youth for Sustainability Ambassador as by Masdar City. Ghaya has multiple and numerous achievements related to her environmental and academic excellence. She has spoken in global conferences and has represented UAE in the United Nations. Ghaya, thank you so much for agreeing to do the podcast. Please tell us, when people think of your name, they think of climate action and youth empowerment. But how do you introduce yourself? And why Green Ghaya?
Okay, so a story of Green Ghaya actually started when I was only 6 years old. I was named by that nickname from the Green Sheikh. Once he saw that I was deeply interested in the environment and had as you can see, the spark of environmental cause and environmental change. But growing up, I would describe Ghaya as someone who wants to make change, someone who wants to leave an impact for tomorrow. When I mean impact behind, it's always about the small things that you do that will last forever. We, people, might leave the world, but what stays is our impact, what stays is our legacy, exactly.
Beautiful, right. You focus and center most of your work around sustainability and the environment. But what is sustainability for you?
Sustainability for me, it's about responsibility. It's a way of thinking, a way of living, and a way of respecting human as well as our planet that we're living on. Talking about sustainability, it's not only an environmental cause, it's not an environmental problem, it's our human rights problem as well, our children's rights. When we talk about climate crisis and climate change problems that's going on right now, all of these impact our human rights, impact our children's rights. And so that would mean that we'd have lack of resources. We might not get all of our rights if climate change continues.
Right, so how did this spark inspire you to start Green Buds UAE?
So it all began when, during my childhood in Al Ain, a place where nature and heritage are deeply connected together. And what I mean by that is that growing up, I truly appreciated and respected the environment around me. And all of these has a really, really deep connection to our traditions.
Right.
Growing up, I saw my grandparents, without even having any new sustainable buzzwords, they already lived in a sustainable way that's not just inspiring, but seeing how they're living it is what caught my eyes. I've linked it to heritage. We also have our late Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, who is the first environmental man. This is not his only nickname, but the most known one. When he wanted to grow a plant, and he brought scientists in order to just talk about it, they told him, you can't grow any plants in your land. It's dry. It's deserts. But he still didn't see something as impossible. He had his vision, he had his passion, and he wanted to prove them wrong. So he did. And he grew plants in the UAE, and look at Al Ain now.
Exactly, yeah. We transformed it from a desert to this flourishing land. So is there a particular moment that have really shifted your view and perspective of the world?
I may have begun my journey when I was only 6 years old, but when I saw a huge turning point is when I was 12 years old. I was then titled by the youngest UNICEF Youth Advocate and Ambassador for COP28. And at that time, I was representing the UAE at the United Nations headquarters in Geneva. And so I was talking about a really interesting topic, which was the children's rights in a safe environment. At that time, talking about it, I realized that it's not just an environmental issue, it's a human one. The fact that we might be affected is something that became a huge turning point. I wasn't only the voice of the children of the UAE, I was talking on behalf of children of the world. It's our issue, it's our problem that's going on. It's going to affect us in the future.
Of course.
And not just in the future, but even now. If we saw some countries, if we saw some children are really facing huge environmental problems and are really sacrificing themselves now.
Exactly, right. So you've spoken on many international stages, from the UN, Russia to Saudi Arabia. How do you prepare to represent the youth at these high levels? Walk through the process.
It's always the intention we have. And so I believe Once a youth know what they're capable of, there is nothing limiting them. There is nothing as an impossible. So when I prepare, or let's just say if I'm talking on behalf of youth, on behalf of children, really in a global stage, let's just say that it's always that I know that I'm capable of. I am capable, I can, and I will deliver. And it's not just...
That's a nice motto
exactly,
as well.
yes.
Yeah.
And there is a really quote that I like, which is, if your dreams doesn't scare you, they're not big enough. Mm-hmm. We might face some obstacles, we might face some fear, but that's gonna go away. If you know that you're doing it for a reason, there is nothing limiting you. And when you have the support you need,
right, exactly.
you can do anything.
Right, that's really nice. So you've participated in a lot of events, but is there one event or award that has meant the most to you, and why?
Well, I've been through many, and I believe every event has something that I've learned. Everything I do has something that has an impact. Mm-hmm. So talking about which one will be most, I'd probably say COP28.
Of course, yeah.
It was my first COP, and it was the first COP that has been hosted in the UAE and in the region. So I'd probably say that it was because I was a child, only 12 years old.
Yes,
and
yes.
In a place between ministers, I felt that at that time, this is my place. Mm-hmm. This is what I want to do. It was really inspiring between decision makers and being the voice of children. I had a duty. I had a really big responsibility I felt, and that I had to deliver.
Yes, right. So coming back to COP28, UAE has launched major sustainability efforts. From Masdar city, one of the world's planned eco-cities, to the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park, one of the largest single-site solar projects launched globally. These bold initiatives show how combining innovation and investment lead to these giant global projects and what impact they have. But what new sustainability initiative would you like to see in action?
So I believe we're really lucky here in the UAE because seeing all aspects of sustainability, every aspect is covered already. And so if there is even an issue we're facing, our country has working towards it and has a really good strategic plan for it. I believe if there is any environmental issue or environmental crisis we're facing, I'd probably say water scarcity and rising temperatures. Mm-hmm. We do have water loss, and since winter until now, we haven't seen a single raindrop. Exactly. Right. And so this has really huge impact on water scarcity. Mm-hmm. And so rising temperatures, if we both have water scarcity and rising temperature, that would cause deforestation.
Right.
But thanks goodness, as I said, we do have a really huge support and to a huge sustainable environmental support. So we have nothing to worry about. I'm just stating that as a fact, and that how really of a big issue it is.
You know, Ghaya, I've personally visited a lot of deserts and national parks here in the UAE, and of course everything is beautiful and breathtaking, but something that has really caught my attention is the amount of garbage and pollution that is scattered around, and is inventable, of course. It made me think that awareness is not enough. We can't rely on only educating 10 million people and expect perfect results. So what if we had a system that encouraged people to act better and not just tell them to? For example, there's this deposit system for plastic bottles where people would return the bottles and get a reward, how it is already implemented in Germany. And do you think such initiatives could work? And if so, do you have one in mind by any chance?
So actually, that's a really good plan. But in order to make people be convinced on what they're doing, you said awareness isn't enough. Then I would say, and I would argue to that they're not making enough. They're not doing enough.
How would you make enough then?
I will tell you. In order to make people and to get people convinced, you have to change a whole mindset. If someone is already into something and they think that this is the right way, you can't just suddenly come up with a problem and oh yeah, our world is in danger. You need to convince them. You need to have really good awareness. Mm-hmm. And that happens how can I say it? Shifting mindsets.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
This happens when a leader knows what they're doing exactly. Mm-hmm. Leader has a really strategic plan to go, a straightforward vision, and they know what they're doing. So when they come, they have a really strategic plan in order to get people convinced to do it and to believe that there is an environmental causes doing. Everything is clear, the science is clear, but some people still argue that it might be fake. My question to the audience is, what do you think more solutions that we can implement in order to get a really huge change?
Please put your initiatives and your ideas down in the comments below. So sustainability doesn't always have to start with a big global conference or an international speech. It can start with planting a tree, organizing a school cleanup, recycling a plastic bottle. Sometimes local impact can feel more real, more relatable, more visible, and in most cases, more motivating. So do you think we underestimate the power of community-level action? And can you share an example of how something small can create real change?
Everything starts small. Nothing starts big. And what we can do is that we know what we are capable of. We are powerful. We need to realize, youth and children and individuals and societies in general, they need to realize that their voice actually matters more than they realize. And it's actually, when you just see it through that way and you're like, oh wow, we can do this. And it only starts small. We start as one person, but later a whole society will change. And so that's, they say never underestimate the power of a seed. If you plant one seed,
it will follow.
It will make a huge difference. Exactly.
Yes.
And so people may not realize how even their small actions can lead into a big change. They might not see it at that time, but it will all come and it will pay off later on.
Of course, yes, that's very inspiring. Thank you. Now let's talk about Greta Thunberg, one of the most recognizable faces of the youth climate activism. What's really remarkable is that she didn't start with an organization or a big team. She just had a sign and a really bold idea to change the perspective of the planet. And yet her voice reached global leaders and inspired millions of the younger generation to also take action. Of course, she also faced criticism along the way from famous and bigger people. And it shows how hard it can really be to speak up, especially as a young individual in such a big space. So how do you see Greta's influence on the youth activism? And by any chance, do you relate to her experience?
I believe Greta is a really good example of being a young climate activist. She had her passion within her, and so her passion led her through the way. And it's really inspiring to see how she's actually really into that environmental causes and really into that environmental impact, and how she sees it as a really serious issue that's going on. And so I believe that she's a really good example for that. Being an Emirati child, I can't relate with criticism because I was supported by my family that consists of a mother, father, and siblings. I was supported by my country, our country's ventures as well. Being supported in general, that made me want to do more. That made me want to, just have more to do instead of just stopping, or instead of having I can't do this, it's impossible.
Right.
Instead, I have motivation, exactly.
I really appreciate your input. Now we're going to take a small break from the really impactful questions, and we're going to participate in a small blitz game. It's going to be rapid fire questions. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind, and it's a chance to get to know you personally better and your personal interests. First question, nature or city life?
Nature.
Nature. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
To change people.
Wow. Very big. Favorite book?
I would probably say, honestly, that's a tricky question because every book has a specific way, and I'm a reader, but I'm not that really huge reader.
Right.
But probably realistic books.
Nice, nice genre, yes. Who inspires you the most, not just professionally, but personally as well?
I believe my mother.
Nice.
She's someone I look up to.
Absolutely. Math or English?
English.
If you had the attention of every policymaker and ruler on earth, what would you tell them?
You're doing great, keep going, because that's not enough.
Wow, right. Thank you. Now we'll move on and get to know you at a more deeper and personal level. That's the end of our Blitz game. With so much responsibility, how do you balance and successfully manage your academics with your extracurriculars and all the events that you attend?
It actually takes discipline and clarity. One thing I've learned is that to prioritize what matters and also manage my time intentionally. With that, it helps me to balance between my studies and my advocacy work. And talking about it, every aspect, I've learned something new. From both, I do have challenges, and from both, I do learn from.
That is beautiful. So you've mentioned before that your mom is the person who is your role model and inspires you. How else does your family support you?
My family has played a really huge role in who I am today. They've supported me in everywhere, and not just supporting me in what I do, they've also taught me how to ground myself to my values. The values of respect, humanity, humility, and discipline itself. And so all of these is a foundation and a base to what I am doing right now.
Of course, yes. So you have achieved so much at a young age, showing how passion can drive real change. And for many individuals, getting started is truly like the hardest part. So what advice would you give to the younger people and the younger generation who want to make a difference but don't necessarily know where to begin?
Actually, fun fact about me is that what keeps me going is that the idea of change is possible. Everyone can change. And every time I see a young person taking a lead, a young person speaking up for something, that just reflects me that, oh yes, the main reason I also started was because there was an actual reason that I wanted to see change in.
Exactly,
and so this is actually really inspiring, as well as I want to really spot something. You don't need to wait to be ready. You just, as long as you know what you want, as long as you have this passion and this drive that you want to do more or that you want to make a change, never underestimate the power of what you can do.
Right, yes.
As long as you start, everything is going to make sense later on.
So Ghaya, what are your next big goals and dreams, and where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Actually, for the upcoming projects that we're working on is that we're expanding the Green Buds community team by building partnerships with schools and working on a platform that helps youth turn ideas into action. And so personally, I'm writing a book that captures the real story behind my journey in general, and that's to show the world that everyone is capable of doing something, everyone has an impact, everyone has a passion, everyone can make change.
Absolutely, yes. And Ghaya, just to finish off this podcast, I'd like to ask you this interesting question. If your life was a documentary, what would the title be?
Okay, that's interesting. I'd probably say, okay, well, I have too much options on my mind right now. If I would start, it would be the documentary itself. So I'd say A Miracle Yet to Come.
Wow, I love that. Very inspiring. So, Ghaya, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Your voice is powerful, and I'm sure that it will influence many people yet to come.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you. That was Ruslana Science, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.